Hey, welcome back to the Midlife Method. My name is Cam Allen, and I am so happy to have Rita Black with us today. She is the host of the Thin Thinking podcast and Shift Hypnosis. So, Rita, can you tell us a little bit about your work and how did you get into this?
Yeah, so I know hypnosis is something that might be familiar to a lot of your audience and maybe not so familiar to other people. I started out as a client of hypnotherapy. I was a former pack and a half a day smoker. I struggled with my weight up and down the scale, 40 pounds, and I used hypnosis to stop smoking, even though I was very skeptical about hypnosis itself. I thought it was kind of creepy and a little weird, but my
Mhm.
friend quit smoking and I was like, well, when your friend does it, it's like, okay, I guess it's okay. And I was able to shift my mindset and really leave that one session as a non-smoker. So that got me very, very intrigued about just using my mind more effectively. And I began using hypnosis for other things in my life, including weight management. And that was something that I was able to sort of get my whole mind wrapped around because when we struggle with our weight and if you have clients or students or listeners who are struggling with their weight, a lot of times we know everything about weight loss. Like I was a pro dieter, man. I had dieted for 20, 30 years and I knew every diet that was out there, but I couldn't get myself to do what I knew I needed to do. Right.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
100%. Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
for those of you watching, I'm just showing you this little diagram of the brain because only 12% of our mind is the conscious mind. That's the part that knows how to lose weight and knows everything about it. But our subconscious mind, which is imprinted from, the time we're born and really gets a lot of its wiring up until like our mid 20s. A lot of us who struggle with weight have limiting beliefs, habits, and even our identity. If we struggle with our weight, it's all in our subconscious mind. So the diet may make an impact and we can engage our willpower for so long, but over time, the habits, the beliefs keep coming back and keep us from that long-term success. So why hypnosis can be impactful is if you see this little, what I call it the critical filter. And obviously in the brain, it isn't, doesn't look exactly like this. But the idea is that so much of what the input into our mind on a daily basis is our brain needs some way to sort of filter that out because if we were really taking on all the millions and millions of bits of information that is coming our way, our we would be very overwhelmed and very confused at all times. So our brain has a way of saying, nope, we don't need that. Nope, we don't need that. But that we want to keep, we want to keep our the way we see ourselves and the way we think about ourselves and the way the world is pretty set. So, what hypnosis can do is in the state of hypnosis, you're relaxed and your critical filter becomes more open so that suggestions and shifts in the mind set, how you see yourself, your behaviors, your beliefs can be changed very rapidly in a way where it can't in your normal waking life. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, 100%. So I did my neuro-linguistic programming. I'm a practitioner and you are
Oh,
speaking my
cool.
language. I know exactly what you're talking about. So I know a little bit about hypnosis, but the power of language and how we speak to
Mm,
ourselves and that critical wedge, the smarter we are, which we are all smart because that's who comes to my world, we that it's so thick. And so we need to relax and let our beliefs change so we can actually make an impact and let our unconscious mind work in our favor to reach the goals that we say with our mouth with that 12%.
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So,
Well,
yeah, so I was able to you re-see myself, use up all of
mm,
my mind to really let it to release the 40 pounds and I've kept it off for 30 years.
amazing.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
it was incredibly powerful. And then so I've now helped people over the last 20 plus years do the
Mhm.
same, shift their mind, get 100% of their mind work. Because We have that ability. I mean, and as like you said, language is a huge part of it.
Huge.
The way we position things and how words are positioned in the brain. And uh, we, by thinking about just with what you were saying, a quick reframe, we can re-see who we are and or start to shift beliefs. And I know we were going to talk about night eating. I mean, that
Yeah.
even with night eating itself, I think there's many, you were you know, you and I were having a conversation about exercise. I think the way we see ourselves and all the different identities that we have in our subconscious mind, I don't think people realize, like, we think, oh, well, I have this one identity, but we have thousands of identities. You know, you just mentioned you became a grandmother. You know, that's like you stepped into this new identity and it's a
Yeah.
whole new way to see yourself. And so I
Absolutely.
think all change starts with identity. And
Mhm.
so if you can start with that, then you can really step into a new world rather than changing the world you're in, which that feels a lot of resistance.
Yeah, in my world, and you can speak to this, like, people say with their mouth they wanna do this thing, yet they're not doing this thing, and I believe it's the 88% keeping them locked down because, "Oh, that's not safe. You shouldn't do that. Well, you should just sit on the couch and eat chips today. Don't go to the
Yes.
gym." Exactly, and so, for me, this last year, the last 18 months changed when I changed my belief what exercise had to look like. And then my body got on board. So that's what you're talking about, and I love it, Rita. Perfect.
100%, 100%.
Perfect.
And I love your method because
Oh,
I think a lot of times people will say, especially when it comes to weight loss, they've got this idea like it's I've got to exercise and I've got to eat the food, I've got to go to the gym and go work an hour and a half. And I'm like, when was the last time you exercised? And they're like, I haven't exercised in 2 years. I was like, and you're going to hit the gym for an hour and a half? I mean,
no,
and they don't because in the back of their brain, it's like,
no.
I'm not doing that. That's way too overwhelming.
And if they did do that, then their brain's gonna whisper, "Remember last time you did that? What didn't go so well." So it is all connected.
Ah,
Yeah.
so I think chunking it down, like
Uh-huh.
that concept that you use
Mhm,
with your method is
mhm.
just so perfect for the brain. It can say, oh, yeah, I could
I
do
got
that.
it. Yeah.
That feels doable.
So let's talk about how we can use this and use our brain with the nighttime eating because
Yeah.
when nighttime eating, like they're white knuckling it through the day and then they get to the evening and the wheels fall off, Rita. What is going on
I
there?
know. It's so crazy. I have a saying, if we all went to bed at 5, we would be all thin.
There you go.
So, okay. Well, you know, I'm not a former teacher, but my mother was. I know you're a former teacher, Cam.
Yeah. Hmm.
And, so I like boards and because they're visual, whatever. So I'm going to just start with revealing all of our challenges that we're up against with night eating because night eating is so big for so many people. And like you said, I
Hmm.
think we have it together a good part of the day. Nobody ever comes to me or, you know, none of my students are like, I have a big problem with breakfast. I have a big problem with lunch. It is not the case
Nope.
because most of the time, what is happening in the earlier part of the day is we do have a fair amount of willpower, right? Like, so we
Mhm.
wake up in the morning and we have a fair amount of brain strength and willpower. And what happens over the course of a typical day is we make a lot of decisions and so that willpower ability is decrease, decrease, decrease. So we get to the late afternoon, early evening. Most of our willpower is gone and
Mm,
all of our impulse control is gone. So that's one thing that is working against us is our nighttime impulses are a lot more engaged than earlier in the day where we have more of a rein on them. Then we get to the evening, and a lot of us, I mean, I know, and I'm assuming you too, Cam, are pretty structured with the early part of our day. You know, we have routines. We
mhm.
either go to work or we have routines within our day that are sort of pillars of the day. Okay, I wake up, I do this, and I do that, and do that, and then after dinner or even before dinner, as you know, we hit at 5 o'clock, the day is done in our mind. So and so all that structure that we had falls away. So the evening is kind of more of a free for all. I mean, we do tend to have structure to our evening, we sit and watch TV. There's the structure, or we get on our laptop, or we, read a book. But it's a lot less of a rigorous structure, and usually there are more people involved. There might be another person involved, like our
True.
spouse or our children, right? So, and then they're on unstructured time as well. And then we have this whole blood sugar thing, because a lot of people, like you said, if we're white knuckling it during the day, often we're under eating.
Hmm.
So we'll get to the evening
Hmm.
and we'll be hungry, really hungry. We haven't eaten since lunch, or maybe we've eaten very lightly throughout the day. We get home or, get away from our desk, go into the kitchen, and because our blood sugar has tanked, it takes a very long time once you start eating for your blood sugar, your leptin and ghrelin to sort of adjust and say, we've had enough. So if you're coming home and are hungry, it's a lot easier to tear through a sleeve of crackers than sit down and eat dinner before your body is saying, okay, we're full. And so I think there's also just that sense of under eating, or not really leveraging food in a way prior to the evening, that can cause that you to go, oh, who cares? I'll start again tomorrow. And then that opens the door for after dinner eating and who cares eating. Um, then there's the, hey, let's face it, we're stimulated over the course of our day, and we get to the end of the day, we're like, oh, I'm done. I deserve a treat. I, need a
Mm.
reward. Um, and then we just have patterns of behavior that are pretty established. It's interesting. There is this cue, routine, reward part of a habit, right? A habit is a cue, routine, and a reward. And a lot of people don't realize that dopamine is driving us pretty much all the time. And when we have a dopamigenic pattern, like for a lot of people, night eating is, sit in front of the TV. So the cue is sit down and either relax, watch TV, get on your computer, whatever. And then what happens, and this, I learned this more from working with smokers, but it's really fascinating. So I hope you'll let me just kind of take a moment to explain this. But when people are smokers, such as myself, I was a pack and a half a day smoker. Um, most people think that urge, that little agitated feeling that they get to smoke, is driven with like, oh, I need to top up the nicotine. And that's actually not true, because most people can sleep through the night fine who are
Hmm.
smokers, and they don't have to wake up every hour to top up nicotine. But during the day, they might be smoking once an hour. And what is really driving that smoking is dopamine, because the brain actually expects it. Oh, after breakfast, I expect a cigarette. So it will agitate you and bug you until it gets the cigarette. The second the person lights the cigarette, the urge goes away. They're like, why am I even smoking the cigarette? I don't even want it. You
Hmm.
know. So here's the thing that happens with night eating that is similar. Your brain gets into okay, I expect that first thing, because usually people will eat in a pattern. So they'll eat that first thing, then they'll eat the second thing, and then they'll eat the third thing. And until they do all three things, the brain will keep bugging them until it fulfills that pattern. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
So people think they're weak, and they think like, what's wrong with me? Why do I do the same thing every night? It's not because you're weak, it's because the brain is literally demanding that you fulfill that pattern. So you could be sitting there going, I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to eat, but the brain is like, but I expect this, I bet I expect this, but I expect this, right? I want the popcorn, I want the popcorn, I want the popcorn, right? So you get up and you grab the popcorn and you go to the microwave and you put it in there. And you probably will notice that as the popcorn's popping, you actually begin to calm down. Like that agitated feeling like, oh, there's something, you could have just eaten dinner. There's no hunger involved, but it could feel like there's something missing and there's this void. It's dopamine. And it's saying, so as you get the popcorn, bag out and you rip it open and you eat the first couple of bites, you really experience those first couple of bites. But after that, your brain moves on to the next thing. It's
Yeah.
thinking about TV now, or it's thinking about something, and you're consuming all of those calories and, carbs and whatever. And then typically after something salty, we want something sweet. And then we want something salty again. So there's this whole 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or what have you. So there's a lot of what our pattern is already given. So understanding this gives you a lot of leverage. And then I'm going to walk through it now, how to break through all of this. But this is really what we're up against, is patterns. We're up against even an identity of ourselves as, oh, I'm a
Mhm.
night eater, right? Like, so we have a limiting belief about ourselves and a limiting belief about our ability to, oh, I'm an empty, like I was like when I struggled with my weight, I was a huge night eater. And, one night I was watching TV and I got up and I was eating in the kitchen and I was like, why, why am I doing this? And my subconscious mind actually answered. It said, because you're bored with TV. Like, we don't even question our,
Yeah.
why am I even doing this? I was like, well, maybe I need to become a person who doesn't watch TV after dinner, but does something a little more engaging, or is a little more something that I'm passionate about. But anyway, so we have all of these challenges up against us. So how do we begin to shift it? So my first suggestion would be to change your identity, and to ask yourself, like, how do you want to see yourself
Mhm.
um, in the evening? I don't think we question ourselves about that. Like, we think like, I'm this way, so that's the way I am, versus like, well, what could I be? Maybe I'm somebody who fasts after dinner and I stretch and then I take a hot bath. Or maybe I'm somebody who watches TV, but I don't eat in front of the TV. Like, that's just not that, like, from dinner until I go to bed, I just, I don't eat anything. So we have to really start with, who are we? Like, who do we want to be? Because that will actually shift our brain. Like, when I work with smokers, I, I'm I'm saying, in all of those identities that you have as smokers. So when you're trying not to smoke, you're actually working against an identity that you have, instead of changing identities and stepping into this new identity of being a non-smoker. So I have an identity that I use called food free in front of the TV.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just like this person who's food free in front of the TV, and that's who I am. Now, it
Mhm.
takes a while to really own an identity. But once you understand that it's not something you're fighting against, but you're something you're creating, your brain gets a lot more involved in it, because it's funner for the brain to create something new rather than to work against something that it thinks is true. Does that
I
make
love
sense?
this. Yeah, this works with exercise too, Rita. This is perfect. I love
Oh,
it.
okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
So new identity, a new vision too. Like, what I
Mhm.
mean is, what is possible for you in the evening? I mean, it could be the same thing. It could be television, or it could be watching YouTube videos, or, just like vegging out. But it could be that you use the evening to learn something, or to start something different, or to exercise. My life changed when I started exercising in the evening. I'll exercise in the morning as well, but I'll often go to the gym. Maybe you don't advise this, Kim. I'll go to the gym at 9 o'clock at night, because I'm like, yeah, I didn't get it in today, and I'll go
Mhm.
and I'll, get on the treadmill, but I'll be learning something while I'm doing it, or listening to a podcast or something. So I don't know. So I do think creating a vision of what your night could look like for you is something that could, again, create versus work against.
Mhm.
And then you open up your mind to new possibilities. So that would be the first sort of big picture idea, is change your identity, change your vision. And then the next thing is that you don't want to and somebody was telling me this last night in a meeting with some of my students. They were like, "Oh, I'm getting to the evening, and and I just want to." They were just falling into a night eating pattern, and I said, once you're in the pattern, the train has left the station.
Yeah.
You can't. You have no control and no lever. You want the largest point of leverage with your brain. And like I said, earlier in the day, right when you wake up in the morning, is the perfect time to manage your night eating, not at night. Like, so one thing you can do, just all the famous athletes, all the athletes do this. So Cam, you're probably in the know, is practicing in your mind first before you end up in, on the field or in the court, right?
Yeah.
You, so you want to look at what you want to create for your evening in the morning, and you want to see yourself doing it as if you were in that scenario. Like, okay, I see myself coming home. I see myself pouring myself a cup of tea. I see myself eating dinner, pushing the plate away when I've had enough. I see myself relaxing in front of the TV. And if I have that urge, I'm going to go grab a glass of water. Like, I have an alternative, a plan B, and I see
Hmm.
myself going, and it's not just see, but feel. Like, what does it feel like to go to bed light, aligned, having fasted and not eaten, gone and eaten a bunch of carbs? Like, that feeling is visceral for people. And
Uh-huh.
so when they can really see it ahead of time, it's called future pacing. You're taking yourself through the future, and you're setting a pace of, like, what are we doing? Where are we going? What are we? And you do it a couple of times, and you kind of set that in, and that's where I'm going to go for. Now, it might not happen that night, but chances are you're upping your game and you're practicing in your mind what you want to create. And it's very, very helpful for people to
I love
to do
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I taught elementary school, the first day of school is always like nerve-wracking, and my practice was very similar. I would go to bed and imagine the entire first day of school. So it was like practicing, and so then when the first day of school happened and the kids came in and I met it was so yeah, I love that. So I can see how this would apply to night eating.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're
Yeah.
just working because what you're creating for your brain is an alternative route, right? Like, you are not, I think everybody thinks like there's something wrong with me and I'm broken. It's just, no, it's all just wiring. So it's not about changing who you are per se, but it's changing the opportunity, changing how you see yourself, and you are now changing your wiring. This is a new course I'm taking rather than fighting against the old course. I'm creating a new pathway forward through my evening. And and then you want to set your environment up for success. I think a lot of people, and we've just gone through the holiday season, and I am a big believer in stimulus control. Like, I believe stimulus control is 80% of weight
Yeah.
management. Like, if it's not in your environment, it's not haunting you. And it's a lot harder when you have food on your counter or in your cupboards that are what I would call trigger foods. And trigger foods for everybody has different trigger foods. My
Sure.
trigger foods are different than yours and what have you. You know, if you have a trigger food in your house, it's going to call your name. And do you really want to fight against it? It's in the cupboard saying, hello, I'm here, and hello, I'm here. And if you eat one, you're going to eat the whole bag.
Yeah.
There's a lot of foods you have control over, but the trigger foods are emotionally, physically, and often genetically wired in, so that when you eat one, you're just going to be powerless. And
Wheels
that's
off.
never going to change.
Yeah.
And people come to me and say, but aren't I supposed to be able to live with those foods? I mean, isn't there something like, if I was a better person, I could have it in my house and it
Yeah.
wouldn't be an issue? And I'm like, who told you that?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
what are you talking about?
Yeah,
Like,
tying your worst to food is not really a good idea.
yeah,
Oh,
or just and just like, would a heroin addict have heroin in their house
no.
if
Yeah.
no, it's just like,
Uh-huh.
remove it and
Mhm.
be friendly to yourself and
Yeah.
give yourself a break. So anyway, so with your trigger foods, I would definitely get them out. And
Yeah.
if somebody else in your house has to have them, maybe there's a conversation to be had, or maybe there's a solution, a strategy, like they keep those foods in a special place or a cupboard or something like that. But don't be a victim of the other people. Like, you can be powerful in that situation. And people often, when you say, oh, when that that's a challenge for me. Can we work on that? They'll be very helpful. They often will say, "Oh yeah, let's figure that out." So that would be something that I would definitely recommend, is getting the foods out of the house. Um, so the next thing would be to, when things aren't an option, it's a lot easier for the brain to manage than to manage something, right? So what I mean by that is there is decisional anxiety. And what decisional anxiety is often what we're up against when we're trying to be good, right? Like, I'm going to try not to eat after dinner, fingernail quotes here.
Yeah.
Because what happens in the brain is the part of your brain that wants to have the pattern, the eating pattern, it's kind of like when you were a kid and if you asked your parents for money and they were wishy-washy with you, right? And they said, "Well, I'm not going to give you that money." Now, as
Mhm.
a kid, is that no or is that try harder? The kid is going to say, "Please, please, I'll get the good grades. I'll be really good, please." And they'll wear them down until it's like, take the money. And that is how our bigger brain is when you're like, I'm trying to be good. It's like, oh, it knows every line. But you've worked so hard. Oh, you'll just have one. Oh, it will be different this time. It knows everything to get you to go open that cupboard and begin night eating, right? So when you're trying not to night eat, you're asking for trouble. And it's a actual psychological state called decisional anxiety because you haven't really made a decision. So again, why identities? It's like I am now somebody who fasts after dinner, right? Like so that's a decision and it's
Mhm.
an identity. And when you're standing in that place, food after dinner isn't an option, right? It's like I fast after dinner. I know people who fast and they aren't eating when they're fasting. So it puts your brain in a different state. And when it's not an option, even when I work with smokers, I'll say they'll like, oh, I always need a smoker. I always need a vape. I'm like, well, but there's probably a time when you're like with your in-laws and you don't want to pull that vape out and you're with them for like 4 hours straight and you can't go to the bathroom or you can't, find a, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine. Or if they're in the hospital having tests run, it's like, yeah, I'm fine. Because when it's not an option, your brain doesn't bug you for it. So if you're
Mhm.
using a leverage like fasting,
Mhm.
it's an action versus a resistance. Like when you're trying not to eat, it's I'm resisting eating. When I'm fasting, I'm actually fasting. And that's an active state.
I love that. And then also just starting your day and like imagining what it's going to be like after dinner. Like you've already walked through what you see, how you feel, and then you've added this other action. So I can see how that all ties into your identity. I love it.
Good. Yeah. And if you want to treat after dinner, I think you can manage that too. But I think what you want to do is be very specific about it. You want to say, I'll watch TV for an hour, then I'll sit in the kitchen, I'll have my treat,
Not in
and
front of the
then
TV because that's
not
I
in
don't
front
want
of the
to see the TV.
TV. And, I think it helps to sit down
Uh-huh.
and be mindful, enjoy
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
And then you fast until, the next morning or whatever. So
Love
you're
it.
creating clear boundaries with yourself. And then last but not least, I do think having a mantra helps
Yeah.
because mantras are kind of like little self-hypnosis. It's self-hypnosis. Like I fast after dinner, or I'm food free in front of the TV. It's something you can say over and over and over again to yourself, and it just gets in. It gets in over time. Um, or I love the light feeling when I go to bed, or any of those things can. And I don't know, do you use mantras with
I
your
do.
exercise?
Well,
Yeah.
and I have that one for food. It's taste everything, binge on nothing. Like if I taste something and it's
Oh,
not worth it, I'm not eating it. Like I
yeah.
used to be a teacher and the teacher's lounge all of December was crazy. So everyone's bringing treats in and former me, younger me would eat the whole thing just because it was in front of me, even if it didn't taste good, even if it was dry or I didn't, you know.
Right.
So taste everything, binge on nothing is one of my little mantras for this situation.
That
It
I
has to be
love that.
it has to be worth it. And those are my areas.
Yeah.
Like,
I
if
have a
I'm eating
saying called A plus foods only,
yeah, I
like
love
A
it.
plus food.
That's my A plus food. It has to be worth it. And believe me, if I eat it, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to savor it. I'm going to enjoy the experience around it versus shoving it down my pie hole with no thought or I used to have a love affair with jelly beans in my 40s, Rita. We have not talked about
Oh,
it. But if they were in my grocery cart and then I was in the parking lot and I opened the bag. It was I can see ABC. Like I had a train of things that happened. If I open the bag, then game over. Game
yeah. Oh,
over.
me and jelly beans too. What is it
Yeah.
about them? They
I
hit
don't
the
know.
brain in a very particular
Yeah.
way. Gummy worm, all
Yeah.
those really high sugar
Right. I
candies.
I called it cheap and easy sugar. Like, what? And it wasn't the
Oh,
fancy
I like.
jelly beans, Rita. It was just the cheap Kroger brand. Anyway, that was my story. But and I even tried hiding them from myself. That didn't work.
Oh no. Okay,
So
when it's a trigger food,
yeah.
none of the little tips or tricks work.
Yeah.
It just turns on that part of the brain, and it's like I want more and more and more until it's all gone. So,
But now I can say, I mean, this was, yeah, probably 10-ish years ago now. I can walk from the front of the grocery store to the back of the grocery store through the jelly bean aisle and not get triggered. So I'm like, okay, goodbye. But they're not in my house.
progress.
Yeah, progress. Yeah.
It.
So I
Yeah,
do
I
have
know.
some
Well,
experience. Yeah.
you kind of it's like that aversion therapy. You kind
Mhm.
of it's like you fast forward to how you feel after you eat the jelly
Ugh,
beans, and you're like, oh yeah,
yeah.
no
Not
more.
for me.
And but you have to be beaten down enough to, you
Exactly.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
build that into your mind.
I wish you
Um,
were around when I was going through my jelly bean issue because this would help me with jelly bean so much. Oh.
oh my gosh. And then the last thing I would say is repeat, because if it's I'd like to say it can be
Mhm.
easy, and it can be easy if you use these steps. But I would say give yourself some grace and give
Yeah.
yourself some time. It's a pattern. So it might take a little while. And if you end up eating, um, be an apprentice about it. Say, okay, that didn't
Mhm.
work. What didn't work about it? Like, did I not eat enough? Because another thing I would say is make sure you feed yourself in the afternoon. I mean, you were talking about protein, Cam, earlier.
Mhm.
Eating some quality protein around 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me
100%. Yeah.
is a cure for night eating too. It's just
Yes.
like being fed
Yeah.
before you head into the kitchen and start making dinner, or
Mhm.
I think, because when you eat something quality and it's protein primarily, your blood sugar the leptin will get engaged, because leptin rises slowly. It takes a while. And so if you're doing that an hour or so before dinner, then you won't be starving, and you'll have more access to satiety. And that's what I've noticed. And then that whatever that trigger of under eating is, that propels you into the evening eating. And this isn't always true for everybody, but for those
Mhm.
who kind of undereat and then they end up overeating all through the night, I think eating right in that 4 o'clock h- helps so many people. Just,
I agree with you. I agree, and it's so nurturing. Like, one of my favorite 4 p.m. would be like a bone broth latte, which is, like, nourishing and
oh,
warm, and it's protein, and then there's some fat in there, and you just are like, "Yeah." And then you can make better decisions, and you're not impulsive, or you're not triggering your own self with shoving food in your mouth. Because I do find under eating is a I find that very often. Do you see that in your world too? A lot of under eating and then the wheels come off? Do you notice that?
100%.
Mhm.
I have a saying called protect your zero,
Okay.
meaning like just don't. I mean, I'm in for fasting,
Mhm.
but I also want people to protect getting too hungry,
Oh,
and
yeah,
knowing their bodies enough and also, if you are finishing a fast, to start with protein and not a carbohydrate, so you're
sure.
not spiking your blood sugar and all that stuff. But
And
yes, I find under eating is a huge thing that causes the wheels to come off for a lot of people. Yeah,
I
for
love
sure.
that. Yeah. If someone were to get through part of the day and then they had maybe the trigger food, and what would you say to them to help them get back on track and not throw up their hands and say, "Oh, this isn't for me. I'm not good at this." Or what would you say to somebody? How do
Well,
you
I would say, I mean, the first thing I would say is to eat some protein.
Mhm.
If you've eaten a trigger food, I find that if you get some Greek yogurt or if you just eat some quality protein, that will kind of subside what I call as the carb zombie, the part of the brain that just gets really triggered. And then it just, that the hyper eating
Yeah.
that occurs. And I would say, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go about this, but one thing I would say is, we have a very vicious inner critic and an inner rebel. And the critic is like, you blew it. And the rebel is like, well, since I blew it, I might as start over tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the problem with doing that is that people don't realize is that when we start, so we beat ourselves up, we get angry with ourselves, and that creates a lot of internal stress, friction, and pain, right? Like, oh, I don't like this feeling. So then the reason why we will throw up our hands isn't because we're weak. We'll throw up our hands because when we say, I blew it, I'll start again tomorrow, all of a sudden we relieve ourselves from that internal pain because
Mhm.
now we're absolved because we'll be perfect tomorrow. And to the degree we promise to be perfect tomorrow, it gives us license to eat whatever we want tonight. So it will give us more license to overeat if we say, well, I was so bad and I'm just
Yeah.
gonna. So I would say, don't first of all, don't beat yourself up, forgive yourself.
Mhm.
Because then you aren't instigating that inner critic that is causing you to feel bad about yourself. There's no shame. Like I always say, one identity when I'm working with people is to be an apprentice, I'm mastering this. And in order to master something, you need to
Mhm.
have an apprentice humility and just be like, okay, well, that didn't work. I ate some trigger foods. Let me eat some protein and stabilize myself. Learn like
Yeah.
what happened? Why did that, why did I have that trigger food in the house? Or why did I allow myself to get too hungry? Or what, like what correction could I make? Because what you're doing is taking yourself out of the rational brain and into the rational brain. So I'm sorry, you're taking yourself out of the emotional brain and putting yourself into the rational brain. And that will calm you down. And that actually is a really great brain state to actually learn and make self corrections. In the area of weight management, and maybe it's the same with exercise. It's very black and white. I'm either good or bad, right? Good or bad, good or bad, good or bad, rather than the nuanced gray where you actually self correct and learn. Now, in most areas of our life, right? Like parenting, like our jobs, we don't have the luxury of being either good or bad. We have to kind of all of a sudden, most of the time, not be perfect or not be horrible, but somewhere in between. We don't The world of dieting creates this very, you're
Mhm.
either perfectionistic or you're off the charts. There's no in between. But long term permanent weight management is about uh, really being in that moment with yourself and saying, okay, what did we learn? And self correcting, through all of it. So I would definitely have that person, if something didn't go right in their evening, forgive themselves,
Yes.
uh, and say, hey, you know what? I forgive myself. It's how human. I have an opportunity for growth here. It's a O uh, OP OFG moment, opportunity for growth.
Yep.
And what can I learn? And I'm going to eat some protein to stabilize myself, and maybe even do some squats or something to,
Exactly. And
you know,
I love that we're talking about this because I do believe midlife is about learning more about yourself. And when we try to shame ourselves, we're trying to control ourselves. Like that that's not what we need
yeah.
to do. We need to love and understand ourselves and then make the very next decision. We can be back on track. We don't have to wait until tomorrow.
Yeah, I think people I often will say, well, if I'm compassionate with myself, I'm going to even eat more. And I'm like, actually, research shows that the more compassionate you are,
Uh-huh.
the more you're willing to work with yourself, and then more quickly you're able to get back online
Yeah.
versus, um, you know, whipping yourself into shape. It doesn't really work.
Or waiting till Monday. I'll, never miss a
Yeah.
Monday. I hate that slogan in the gym
Yeah.
because Monday should be like every other day. Like, you don't have
Yeah.
to have the wheels come off. It's okay.
Yeah.
I love this conversation, Rita. This has been super helpful. If a woman is listening right now and she's struggling with nighttime eating and feels stuck, what do you want her to hear right now? Like, what's like one little tidbit for her to take?
Uh, well, I would just say start with instead of looking at yourself as a struggler, look at
Mhm.
yourself as an apprentice and have
Love it.
that question for yourself like, what could my evenings be like? Like, if
Mhm.
I could have any evening that I wanted, create an evening for myself, what would that look like? And start from there. Because once you open up your brain is very powerful and you're a powerful problem solver. But I think we're so much coming from the lack than the opportunity. And
Mhm.
when you focus on the opportunity, your brain will start to go to work for you in a much better way.
I love it. And midlife is the perfect time to learn more about yourself. I love it. So
Yes.
yeah, it's perfect. I call it the midlife awakening, the midlife transformation,
Oh, I
whatever
love
it
that.
is. Yeah. Like I am not buying into society that menopause is I'm old and I'm just gonna hang it up and be in the corner. That's not for me.
No, we're
No,
just getting started.
just getting started. Absolutely. Rita, this has been a delight. Where can people learn more about your work and then thinking? And I know you have a masterclass, so tell us.
Yeah. So you can check more. I do have a thin thinking podcast, menopausal moment there with my brain.
Guys, it
Uh,
happens. Need some protein, Rita.
and I do have a free
Mhm.
masterclass, free online masterclass, and in it is really we get more deep into the subconscious mind and how to push back there. We look at non-hypnotic ways that you can shift and push back the mental roadblocks that have been keeping you struggling with weight. So I give you tactical things that you can do. And then we also do a weight release hypnosis session so people can
Love
feel
it.
it and learn it if they've never done hypnosis before. And even with
Yeah.
people who've done hypnosis before, they really love the session. It's a good one. And you can access that with www.shiftweightmastery.com. That's shift like shifting car gears, weight, and then mastery. So all one word, .com/free,
Okay.
free. So
I'll have that in the
there you
show
go.
notes. So
Okay,
everything
cool.
will be there. Yeah, that is amazing. And I've gone to Rita's masterclass before, and it is awesome. So I
Oh,
don't
thank
want
you.
anyone to feel like scared about hypnosis because we put in ourselves in a trance all the time when we are mindlessly watching TV or we're scrolling social media or when we're driving. We're putting ourselves into a trance. And this time we're putting things in that are helpful to our brain to actually help us live a better life. So I
Yeah,
love it.
a
Yeah.
100%. And just
Mhm.
FYI, the stores and the food marketers spend billions of
Yes.
dollars getting your brain into a trance state when you go into the grocery store
I
to look at
believe
all those
that.
foods.
I believe that. And even like, yeah, all of that, social media, everything, marketing,
Yeah,
all of that, we're being
we get
marketed
so many
to.
food signals and crazy
Yes.
signals. So, yeah, definitely we're all hypnotized. It's just what we choose to allow our
Yeah.
minds to be focused on.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And our brain made up the stuff to begin with. So why not have it make up more helpful stuff so we can actually live
exactly.
a more healthy, vibrant life because that's what this is about.
Yeah,
Rita, this has been
100%.
a total delight, and everything to connect with Rita on social media and her podcast and her masterclass will be in the notes below this video or audio if you're on audio.
Thank you, Cam, for having me on. And thank you, everybody. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yes, thank you.